Hey guys, Tightrope here. You may notice my voice a bit different. I've been sick the last couple of days, but I'm pretty much back to normal today. And it's patch day, so let's have a look at Operation Sapphire Jackal, patch 1.1.0. So there's been a lot of changes in this patch for just like single player stuff. They've added like a in-game store, challenges. I've heard these challenges are quite unpredictable, like quite hard to achieve. Some of them are like build 5 concrete bunkers in a game or something like that. So they're probably going to need a bit of fine tuning. Exactly like the numbers on the challenges, they seem a bit haphazard how they've been implemented at the moment. That's how you earn merit, and merit is how you can buy some cosmetics. From what I hear, there's only one cosmetic set that you can buy with merit on the store. Everything else you have to buy with cash, which is, you know, probably not too unexpected. We've got audio fixes, audio adjustments for map pings. Let's hear how those sound. So the revised audio pings. First off, I want to do a quick detour though. You notice here we've got attack ping, defend ping, and then question ping. But you see this is on RT, which makes sense in terms of hotkeys. You know, you're going left to right on your keyboard, and then E is back on the other side of R. So, like, you know, if they've gone to all this trouble doing like grid keys for all these units, and then for some reason for these pings, they've done some unusual stuff. Like maybe they could rearrange these or change the hotkeys by default. Maybe I could, you know, it's just a little detail, but still it seems very strange to me. But that's how it works. But anyway. Okay. Sounds like somebody's farting. Maybe that's unkind. I think I still would like the symbol to appear on the screen for longer, like the exact point that you mention. Because you could see it on the mini-map flashing the area, but you may say to your teammate, hey, you know, there's a machine gun here, target that with a mortar barrage, right? It's in the fog, you don't know exactly where it is, and by the time you move your screen across here, you don't know where to barrage anymore, and then your teammate's like, oh, it's behind the boats, more behind the right boat than the left boat. It's just a mess. So I think, you know, I do appreciate these pings having a longer and more noticeable noise, but I think the indicator needs to last longer as well. On the screen, needs to persist for longer. So to make your coordination easier for those kind of teamwork moments. And then from there, we're just going to jump straight down to the multiplayer bug fixes. Afrika Korps emergency repair kits no longer work while vehicles are moving. That's pretty good, so they can't heal themselves up while they're driving around. Kind of have to be stationary while repairing. I think that makes a pretty big difference to the Afrika Korps late game. Matilda heavy tank will now shoot infantry with its coaxial machine gun. That's good. Stuart marked target can no longer stack. So this kind of nerfs my Stuart spam strategy. And taking the Pathfinder's upgrade for scouts in US Forces Airborne Battle Group now works correctly on scouts that were in the building production queue at the time the upgrade was taken. Previously, they would spawn without the extra unit in the squad. This is a bit strange, because the way you would do it previous to this bug fix, we'll have to check how it works, is that we queue up scouts then go airborne, then go pathfinders, you'd pay the scout price, but you'd spit out scouts. They had to reinforce one model, but you'd still end up saving maybe like 30-ish manpower. I forgot how much it was overall, because the scouts were cheaper than pathfinders, like constructing them and then reinforcing them. So hopefully they've made some adjustments to counteract that. So here we are simulating the previous start you go for with US forces with pathfinders. So you queue up 2 scouts, then go airborne, pathfinders. Turn auto reinforce off here, so we're not going to get our manpower tainted. So at the moment I've just spent 160 manpower each. Interesting to see, it says 213. I cancel them here instead of 200. Uh-oh. So I think I had like... Yeah, so then they spawn here with 4 men. You don't have to reinforce them. So essentially your first 2 pathfinders, you get a full 40 manpower discount on them each, instead of having to pay for the reinforce cost, which would bring them up to 190 with the new reinforce change, which I think was fine. So the bug fix kind of buffed your first 2 pathfinders. So maybe we'll see strategies that revolve on just making use of like 3 pathfinders instead of like 5 or 6 based on this. Those were like the most important bug fixes in my opinion. Just want to gloss over those. So infantry and mortar flares decreased in duration from 30 to 15 seconds. Yeah, all right. I think in Code 2 they lasted longer than 15 seconds, but you also had to pay munitions for them. A lot of these abilities are free now in Company of Heroes 3, so a bit more spammable, not as much opportunity cost. So it could sometimes make things a little bit hard to coordinate, you know, popping off a flare and bringing in some off-map artillery or something. It's 15 seconds, it's not a huge window, but it's probably for the better of the game if they want to keep a lot of these abilities for free. Loiters were clearly overtuned across the board, and they've toned down the abilities to make their impact more appropriate for their cost. So the British anti-tank rocket loiter, 50% cost increase, 120 to 160. Rocket damage is halved, and the rocket count gone down from 6 to 5 per pass. So it's a lot of nerfs. I have to see how that looks in-game. So let's take a look at the revised performance of the British Land and Sea Battle Group Anti-Tank Rocket Loiter. So I think previously this would do maybe about 2/3 health of a Tiger per plane per pass, if it got like a real nice connection. With 2 planes going through there, a little bit under half health. Second pass, a little bit under half health again. So it's going to require a 3rd pass to finish this off.
Congratulations, Commander. Tiger destroyed.
Alright. One thing that still kind of annoys me about these loiters is there's no edge of the targeting circle left on the ground you can see in game. So it makes it quite hard to know when you've backed far enough away. You're having to estimate that on the mini-map or tactical map. I feel it's just too inaccurate. So I would really like these types of loiters to have a ground indicated zone on, if possible. But you know, that's in terms of damage, that seems to be a lot more in line with how it was in Company of Heroes 2. In terms of damage, the planes do seem to come through faster though. Like the timing between attack passes is quite a lot shorter in Company of Heroes 3 than it was in 2. So overall they are still more lethal, but the damage per pass now seems to be pretty similar. Just the passes come through more rapidly.
Circle in the area.
Now I'm going to test them out against multiple mediums, see how this goes.
Bombs away.
Okay, that's a good amount, about 500 damage. So we saw, I think, a bit That's pretty similar to what we saw damage-wise on the Tiger, actually.
Hold on to your hat. This is a big one.
Looks like the second attack plane didn't peel off and start targeting something else. This time a bit less, maybe like 450-ish.
Hold on to your hat. This is a big one. Target's buggered.
See, it doesn't seem to make a huge difference. Medium or heavy, like the larger hitboxes, don't seem to change things too much. But yeah, the damage does seem to be much more on par with what we saw in Company of Heroes 2. The Wehrmacht Luftwaffe Stuka loiter, anti-infantry loiter damage from 30 to 20, decent size reduction there. Anti-tank loiter damage halved, so similar to the British one. And then rate of fire is also decreased, probably like relatively similar to this in terms of reduction. So pretty similar nerfs for the Wehrmacht and the British loiters here. I'm still not a big fan of these mixed like anti-infantry and anti-tank loiters. I felt like that was a big mistake from Company of Heroes 2 doing like an anti-everything ability. Just made it too hard to defend. You couldn't like backpedal with your units of one type and then hold the line with your units of the other type that's not getting targeted, allow for like a safer extraction. But yeah, all right. It's a separate topic for a separate day. But, you know, overall, good to see these getting some nerfs. So now taking a look at the Stuka loiter with its revised nerfs. The Churchill here, pretty similar to the Tiger in terms of size. 150 damage there. Decent suppression. That was a lot more potent. It's about 250, I think. Second pass. That's more in line with the British rockets. Yeah, I think that was 200 just then. So over the course of the ability, one anti-tank plane can do 725 damage to a heavy tank. It's probably alright. Typically, these kind of planes seem to, or at least in Company of Heroes 2, have better tracking. So as the enemy's tank was moving around, they would often connect with like better than the rockets would. Rockets seem to always be off target more than these kind of cannon style attacks. So better tracking, maybe slightly worse damage while stationary. Afrika Korps support anti-tank loiter is actually getting a cost reduction, which is interesting. Didn't really see this too much in game just because it's not a very popular commander, but at least in 1v1s, but I'll have to check its performance, see if it's kind of consistent among all of these. So now the anti-tank loiter from armored support for DAC. See how this one goes. It's 100 damage. 100 damage. Every time. I wonder if they do more damage if they're targeting lengthways rather than widthways. Definitely seems to be a pretty big step backwards in terms of damage compared to the Brit rockets. As I said, typically these kind of cannon planes have better tracking on moving vehicles. So in reality it might end up being better. Especially at killing like medium tanks. But yeah, damage-wise, this ability does seem to be quite a bit weaker than the others. Maybe that's why it cost a lot less earlier. And then the US Forces Airborne Reinforcement Loiter fixed the ability reinforcing a squad to full strength even after the ability was over. That's good. Maximum number of reinforced entities from infinite to 12 to 15 total. Wonder if that depends on like the manpower cost of each model or what it's based on. So let's say you do 12 at like 25 manpower each. It's about 300 manpower. That's assuming you can get like pretty much max value out of it. 300 manpower for now a cost increase from 80 to 150 munitions. Like in terms of straight like manpower for munitions, I don't think that's a terribly good trade. Like you'd kind of want to, if you're using that kind of munitions offensively, you want a squad wipe for that as well as doing that much manpower damage, right? So it doesn't seem like it's that good, but then, you know, maybe it can help you win fights on the front line. Maybe that can offset its relatively bad manpower to munitions cost. I don't know. Anyway, reinforced rate dramatically reduced to one model replaced every 4 seconds. I mean, that's still pretty fast reinforced rate, honestly. So I don't think that's really too much of an issue. US Forces Engineer Squad lighted up veterancy ability now can be used without a flamethrower. Costs 30 munitions without the flamethrower upgrade. That's interesting. I suppose this allows you to get it with the sweepers. 30 munitions, so I think the flamer costs 50 itself. So it's very expensive, but you know, there might be situations where you're desperate enough to go for that. So, yeah, that's interesting. So here's the revised lighted up. As you can see, I've got a sweeper squad here with the lighted up 30 munitions. Can use it against this building here. Great air squad inside it.
Engineers on the hook.
You can see that lead model kind of just pulled a flamer out of his backpack. Now he's torching. Two big flame bursts to the building. Use the grenadier inside. Under a quarter health. So yeah, pretty strong anti-garrison tool. 2-minute cooldown on that. So I could definitely see some utility to this. You know, as a garrison clearing tool. And, you know, say if you drop your flamer, not sure if that's possible, but say if you picked up like a bazooka, and then that took a weapon priority slot, and then you end up dropping your flamer. Maybe this could also allow you to get some value out of that veterancy star. Otherwise it would be useless. But yeah, nice little change there. Pathfinders. We have found that Pathfinders provide too much momentum and utility in the early game, allowing players to rush out the overperforming Sherman 76mm tanks. We have made adjustments to make this build less oppressive and will be closely monitoring the strategy. Build time increased from 25 to 33 seconds. Flare ability range decreased from 50 to 40. Now have access to the utility package. Flares, rifle smoke grenades, and rifle grenades now all require the utility package. Wow. Reinforced costs increased from 25 to 30 manpower. Really? Smoke rifle grenade recharge time increased from 120 to 180. Upkeep per population increased from 1 to 1.25 manpower per minute. So Pathfinder is obviously like the strongest strategy in 1v1 at the moment. A lot of nerfs to them here. Flare reduction combined with the reduced time up in the air. Pretty big nerfs to flares overall, which is good because it's like you can't use support weapons at all. Like machine guns offensively when they're going Pathfinders because they just had unlimited flares. It was just horrendous to play against, honestly. And then now you have to upgrade the utility package if you want to use all that stuff as well. So it's another munition sink, which I think is probably fair, if I'm honest. That Pathfinder package was just giving so much right from the first second of the match. Reinforced costs, I'm not sure if this is 100% necessary. They do trade like reasonably well, especially in like early game engagements. against like grenadiers, but nobody really builds grenadiers anyway. But they do kind of fall off in the late game. So maybe they will do with like a slight vet rework or something, because it feels like late game these are going to be a real anchor on your manpower with this altered reinforced cost. And yeah, I'm happy that smoke rifle grenade is getting increased in cooldown. If they're not going to change the duration of the smoke, which is I think what I would have hoped for, at least they'll make it less spammable. So tilting when somebody could just come up and launch a smoke on you, cut off, hide in there, maintain control, you cut off for such a long period of time. I think personally I would like to see these kind of handheld smoke grenades reduced more to Company of Heroes 2 levels of duration, and maybe leave some other forms of smoke longer lasting. But all right. And then they also had their manpower drain increased. This is one thing that's different between Company of Heroes 2 and Company of Heroes 3. Company of Heroes 2 was based entirely on the population they took up. It was just a linear scale from 0 to 100. However much PopCap they took up, that's the proportion of manpower you get taxed. But in COH3, similar to COH1, they are more tailored manpower upkeep. And you can see here, Pathfinders are getting nerfed. So yeah, as I said, combining the reinforced cost with the tick rate, they're going to be a real sink for manpower in the late game. Might be a slight over nerf here, but we'll have to wait and see how it plays out. Oh, okay, scouts get the same build time as Pathfinders now. The 76mm Sherman set our AoE damage drop-off reduced to 75mm levels. And then damage cap decreased from 4 to 3 men. So you'll only be able to kill 3 men at a time if you get a really good hit on them, basically. So a lot less lethality from the 76mm Sherman after this change. Testing the revised 76mm Sherman up against some grenadiers here, clumped up on the wrong side of cover. Kind of like the best case scenario for the Sherman, really. See how it gets on. Okay, let's just switch targets mid-fight. Still seems respectable. But it definitely seems worse. Wonder how this compares to the Easy 8 now. Maybe this leaves like more of a role for Easy 8 in the US Forces lineup. Or if it got the same nerfs. Might have done because, yeah, maybe they share the same weapon. I'm not exactly sure. But yeah, definitely a noticeable nerf in terms of anti-infantry. But they may also like be for the better. Maybe that leaves more of a reason for you to actually use the high explosive rounds. Now up against some grenadiers out in the open. Don't have the machine gun upgraded on this, by the way.
They're looking for targets in the open.
Yeah, against the unit out in the open, does look less impressive for sure. Well, a lot less impressive when you're up against something so badly spaced apart. I think it's because if you miss, like we saw 2 shots miss up here, AoE now isn't like large enough to still actually hit that model. So you're not really doing any damage. Maybe that's the difference maker. And the Carro Armato is getting some changes. Was too efficient for its timing and cost, combined with a powerful veterancy ability and bugged ability, scaled to a point where it could outcompete higher tier tanks. The following changes tone these factors down. So the AP rounds penetration going way down from 90% pen boost to 33%. 5 fuel cost increase. Italian Vanguard, the reload bonus per nearby Italian unit going from 10% to 5%, and then capping out at 25%. So they're not going to have like absolutely ballistic rates of fire now when you group a bunch of Italians together. And then the main weapon fire rate has also been decreased 0.3 of a second on the shorter side and 0.6 of a second on the longer side. So a much slower rate of fire, especially when combined with these other nerfs up here. So big nerfs to the Carro Armato. And combined with the bug fix to stop those vehicles driving around while they're getting repaired up, should be some pretty big nerfs overall combined to this type of tactic. Alright, so we're going to have a little bit of a duel here. Got 4 Carros versus 2 76mm Shermans. All the side upgrades available from the armory have been ticked. And yeah, Shermans only have 76mm, they don't have the improvised armor or anything like that. Just the 76mm conversion. We'll see how this gets on.
We've been given a purpose, boys.
Rounds. Without the AP rounds, they are quite weak. I'll say that much. But while they're active, it's still very competitive, and this is like pretty common sight in most games. At least before these nerfs went through, these kind of numbers, Carros would be outnumbering the Shermans by this kind of engagement would happen quite frequently. In fact, sometimes it might even be like 5v2. So, still seems like Carro's probably going to be viable after these changes. But overall, I'm quite disappointed. It's been about 3 weeks since the last balance patch, and this is the list of changes we get. I was really hoping for maybe like 3 times this amount, if I'm honest. Maybe standardization of anti-air to make that more consistent, unless there was somewhere else that I missed. I don't think so. Like maybe cost or performance tweaks to underutilized units, try buff them into some relevancy. So yeah, a little bit disappointed that the patch is so short, but at least they did address some of like the worst offenders here. But yeah, this is not as much as I had hoped for. If you enjoyed this video, I hope you consider coming on board as a Patreon backer.